recording this now. So yeah, I crunched all of their teachings into 13 timeless essentials. And the second reason I'm doing this is I've mentioned this earlier. It's just building a strong community. And as I said, there wasn't really a community for me when I first started. And if I really tally up the amount of hours I spent trying to just find what matters and trying to find and make sense of this stuff, I actually think I wrote it down. I had a spreadsheet somewhere where I actually just mapped it all out, but it came out to somewhere around like 1,800 hours I spent over 40 over 4 years reading books, practicing, blogging, bugging developers like Von Vernon on Twitter, trying to learn this stuff and get answers. And I think if you take like the average developer salary, let's say $35, I think that was somewhere around like 70K it cost me, like in personal expenses to learn this stuff. And I am by no means, I didn't, yeah, I see 10,000 hours, whatever. That's not 10,000 hours. That's only 1,800. But I'm willing to bet that's at least 1,500 more than a lot of other people, or maybe even 1,700 more than a lot of other people. Yeah, I don't know how I did that. Maybe thank ADHD for that. Who knows? So that's that's what happened there. So I want to build a really strong community because I want there to be a place where we can all just jump in here, mentor each other, partner up with each other on projects, and also personally teaching developers, actually mentoring them, like mentoring them one-on-one or mentoring them in groups. I feel like once you go through this, it's like you have it's like a rite of passage. I'm like, yeah, he's good. So there's Daniel in here. I pwn pancakes. I'm like, yeah, Daniel's good. I will recommend him for anything. You want to hire somebody in that can do great work? Yeah, Daniel's got it. Like he's he's been initiated through this ceremony, right? I actually even want to go and print out like medallions and make sure that all the Software Essentialist alumni like get medallions or something like that. It'd be really cool. But yeah, I wanted to build a really strong community. I want people to be able to pair up with each other and yeah, get great jobs, do great work, build cool stuff, leave a positive impact on the world. And then thirdly here, this is a community where we talk a lot about mastery. And there's actually a great Robert Greene book. I wonder if I have it in here. No, not in here. It's one of my favorite writers. But mastery it's just the beginning, right? I think it's super, super important. If anyone here has ever seen like that, I actually have it on my wall here. If you've ever seen that like the flow channels, it's by the guy, what's that guy's name? The Russian dude who wrote that book, the crazy long last name. Let me pull that up. The flow, anxiety, boredom stream. Some of you know exactly what I'm talking about and are just like, bro, just get it faster. Yeah, I know. This thing here, I'll post it in the chat. Yeah, that you guys can see. So what happens is I find that you're probably Russian dude. Yeah, I find that where are you on this channel here? Ask yourself that question. Are you building like screens in a dashboard and like getting annoyed by that? Or are you just completely overwhelmed and you're kind of, has anyone seen, I guarantee you already know the answer to this question. If you guys have ever seen like Spider-Man 2, or I think it was Spider-Man 2, where he's like trying to save the train from like crashing. He's like, ah, it's gonna go off the bridge. Maybe you feel like that, like at work. Wow, you're dating yourself, man. Best movie though. What do you mean by that? Yeah, like that is like the anxiety side of this equation. Dude, I'm not even in my 30s. I just look like I'm in my 30s. Oh, the Spider-Man. The Spider-Mans. Yeah, good point. Yeah, so anyways, yeah, where are you on that? That like the flow chart, your anxiety or boredom? Because I think what happens is once you unlock a level of mastery, You find yourself in the middle. And when you're in the middle there, you guys, I'm sorry, I have this thought in my brain. I need to tell you this. Now that we're talking about Spider-Man, I went to this party once, and I shit you not, this dude he had, oh my God, maybe 70 Spider-Man 1 VHSs in his room. I've never seen anything like that in my life. Sorry, that has been haunting me ever since I said Spider-Man. So I just had to share that with you. But yeah, it unlocks this level of inspiration and creativity, like once you tap into some level of mastery. And that's also where I think you get the ability to do the stuff you actually care about, the stuff that you actually want to do, instead of stuff you really don't care about personally. So the last thing I want is for you to be at work just fighting code or grinding leet code, trying to get. Oh my God. This is stuff that makes me sad. Or getting existential about like whether you should be a programmer. Anyways, I don't want you to be in that situation. So we want to find some level of mastery so that you can do the stuff that actually matters to you. All right, cool. Let's see if we can move along here because I could talk about this forever. But yeah, you guys know who I am. I used to work at Apollo as a developer advocate. That was a good time. And some of you are familiar with SolidBook, which is the first version of what would eventually become the Software Essentialist mentorship training and what would become this course that I'm working on. Well, actually, today is the launch of the course. And then also the next version of the book is just going to be based on the pretty much everything here because this is fantastic, I find. And yeah, this blog, like it all started with this blog. And I really just started the blog in the first place just to share what I was learning about how to organize my messy TypeScript, or my messy TypeScript wasn't even a thing when I first started. Just, yeah, how to organize my messy Node.js and React code. And it's just grown from there. And now we have a community, and I'm so freaking proud of this. And I'm just so happy everyone's here. So let's see. Now, the Pareto principle. I'm sure everyone is familiar with this. The 80-20. Yeah, so this shirt I'm wearing right here, 1000%, 20% of the time, I'm wearing a black shirt like this. I have 3 of them. And nobody wants to see the inside of my closet right now because it's a complete mess. And it's actually just doesn't make any sense because I don't wear any of that stuff really. So yeah, the 80-20 is something that's very real in nature. And that kind of begs the question, what is the 80-20 of software design and architecture? Curious, what do you guys think? What do y'all think the 80-20 might be? When I first started looking for the answer to this, I thought it was domain-driven design. Ah, that's the answer. I've found domain-driven design. And now that I have this, I will write the scalable good code and the bounded contexts. I thought that was it, personally, for a while. It's not the end-all be-all. It's just a piece. It's just like a view on software design and architecture and testing. Or actually another way to think about it, it's like picking a way of thinking off the shelf. Thinking about everything completely through a domain-driven design point of view. Picking a way of thinking off the shelf. Oh, that's quite good. Really, that is what it is. Earlier on, I was saying I used to be like a code first thinker, which is you just solve problems in terms of thinking of the technology. Then you go from, I think the next natural transition from that is to go to something maybe like domain-driven design, which helps a lot. And I think it's a necessary transition because now you actually have some sort of ability to make sense of where things should go. You start to become a little more principled and take into consideration things like business logic and the language you're using, the words you're using, and you start to realize that stuff actually matters. So that's a good next natural transition in your thinking. But you get stuck. Where can anyone think about where you might get stuck here and why? Think about it for a sec, I'll explain. 20% work, 80% faith. A good chunk of that 20% is asking the right questions. Yes. When debugging, it's quickly move in the right direction. Yeah. I want to be asking the right questions and stay out of having to be doing a lot of debugging in the first place. Can we even circumvent having to be doing debugging? I think that's a great question. How can one circumvent having to debug? Be doing a lot of that. To be honest, I actually spend very little time in debuggers. So, anyways, I'll tell you where the CD stuff breaks down. It breaks down around the idea of. Oh, actually, you know what? I had a great image for you guys. I had such a great image. Let me see if I can find that real quick. Still sharing this Pareto principle? Yeah. Let's pull this up. Yeah, so anyways, I'm not sure I could find that image for you guys. But there's this developer named Scott Bellware. If I just search Scott Bellware. Oh, here we go. Easy. Scott's great. And you know what's amazing? Check this out. This was literally 1 year ago. 1 year ago from today. Scott, he says every developer can struggle or has experiences with structural design. Yeah, talking about chasing the hype and whatnot. Being a part of a group that is seen as popular, blah, blah, blah. What he's getting at here is this idea is when we get in this domain-driven design level of thinking, the tendency is to just think in terms of bounded contexts or aggregates and all these kind of DD terms and splay everything you look at in terms of these domain-driven design patterns. And as I said earlier, like that's a good thing to get started, but you don't want to get stuck here because not everything can be splayed onto these DD patterns per se. It's a level of abstraction in thinking, but it is not the only level of abstraction to be thinking at. It's like a shortcut, right? You don't want to get away from, as like you do want to get away from thinking fully in terms of just domain-driven design, because there are levels deeper to this. Some of you might know where I'm going with that, and then maybe you'll know where I'm going with that, but it goes deeper. It goes much deeper here. So Scott says, like patterns are the palette, not the painting. Oh, I love that. And around this time, I was beginning to question that too. And I found this book called Object Design by Rebecca Worfs-Brock, who, in my opinion, Rebecca's like the Aristotle of design. So I found this book, Object Design, and it literally did change my life. And it kicked off what has become this program, this mentorship, and I'll tell you exactly how and why in a second. But moving from domain-driven design level thinking to this next phase, which I call just responsibility-driven thinking, is huge, absolutely massive. So this is one of the very few books. If you see Scott say he's happy about something, by the way, take note of that because there's a lot that frustrates Scott in this thing of software design. So he's like, that's a great book to read. I'm like, yeah, it's pretty great. I love how we have this and that. We have this ability to solve these problems in terms of like roles and responsibilities and collaborations. So, yeah, that's great. But that's just, you're still now in another matrix of thinking. You just move from one to another one. And I realized, oh shit, he's right. Now, moving from this DD level thinking to responsibility driven design level of thinking is great, exceptional, because now you can begin to look at problems in any problem and ask yourself, what are the responsibilities here? And maybe what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pull up a Figma so I could map this out for you guys visually. This is like one of my favorite things to do, is to just like riff stuff out here and just explain them out like this. Yeah, you guys are seeing into my brain here. So responsibility driven design, right? So it's incredible roles, responsibilities, collaboration. If I could spell. Nope. This is absolutely incredible next place for you to be thinking at, because we could take a problem, any problem. Let's say I wanted to, and this actually happened to me recently. I was telling the students from earlier, I was saying once, for example, once you get access to the course, let's say you buy the course and you get into the course platform, the question I had was, how do you get people to, how can I get people to go from here into the Discord? Is there an integration? Oh shit, there's no integration. Damn, I guess I'm stuck. I have to manually tell everyone or give people access. I wasn't really happy with that. So from a responsibility driven design point of view, I asked myself, what are the responsibilities? What seems to be the responsibility gap? I have this one system over here. Whoops. Yeah. I have this one system over here, which is the course platform. And I have this other system over here, which is Discord. And we have a particular private community. And I asked myself, okay, how can I get people from who've purchased the course from here over there? There's a responsibility gap. And the gap here is I want people to be able to get access to community, but I want you to be able to do it from here. So what this does is, this is like the high level use case. So this is a responsibility, but the thing about responsibilities is they could be broken down to even smaller parts. Yeah, that's the high level responsibility. So what I ended up doing was, okay, what are the smaller things I need to do? What are other responsibilities involved here? It's like, okay, let's see. What else am I going to need to know or do? Well, I guess I'm going to need to know if they've purchased. I also guess I'm going to be able to have to know if they're in the Discord or not. And I'm not going to do this whole thing, but this is essentially what I was able to do now with this new level of thinking, because it's just a new perspective of thinking about design. And this is much more granular than just thinking from a domain-driven design point of view. Because imagine trying to solve this problem from a DD point of view. There's not really good patterns or ways to do that. It's like the puzzle pieces are too like chunky. Thinking of, oh, what is the aggregate that I need to do this? It's not at the level of granularity that you need in order to think through these problems. And what I found is that responsibility driven design is perhaps one of the most granular levels for you to be able to think through problems. And it's not new, it's actually quite old. And all of the expert object designers have been using this. And I want to also get away from, a lot of devs think that object-oriented programming is bad. Maybe you've seen this video from someone on YouTube who said P is broken and stuff like that. Object-oriented programming and object-oriented design are entirely different things. And because you're a human being, and if you live in the Western world, and if you structure sentences like the way I'm structuring them right now, and you're understanding what I'm saying, there's this concept of object and subject. And it's just the way that we communicate, and it's the way that we think, and it's the way that we create abstractions. So objects are at the core of all design, like structurally. And you could do functional programming using the same object-oriented design ideas, but at the end of the day, we need to have some level of skill in terms of thinking from an object design point of view. So without going into all of that, big thing I'm trying to say here is responsibility driven design gave me this huge ability to figure out how to maneuver a lot more complex design challenges. Now, how this connects back to where we're going in here is I was looking for the 80/20 of software dev. And I found Scott Bellware's post and I started going down this path. And he's, bro, you're still going down a matrix. And I thought, okay, you're absolutely right. I am still going down a matrix. No book can really offer what you really need from, yeah, there is no one true book. And I'm like, yeah, I'm starting to realize that, having read like maybe 60 of them now and starting to still find a lot of new things. And I'm like, but I want to find this 80/20 because I'm writing this book called Solid Book and it's getting too large with all of these freaking topics in it. Anyone here that has Solid Book, just you brave soul for getting this far. And also thank you because like it is just so massive. Just I'll rewind. The whole purpose of this book in the first place was to get you to a point where you know the most important things about software design and architecture. But I think I was writing the book from the point of view where it was like to just teach you in a simple way all of these different topics. Those are two entirely different goals. The goal of the book now and the final version, which is going to come out this year, is the goal of any good book is true behavior change. And that's what I'm looking for, is true behavior change at the end of the day. And I asked the question, what is absolutely required in order to get someone to the point where they feel confident as a developer writing scalable code in any context, front end, back end, desktop, whatever. That question, I would not have been asking that questions if it wasn't for responsibility-driven design. Why is that? Because I am now asking, what are the responsibilities of this book? What are the minimum responsibilities of this book? What are the minimum responsibilities of a developer to be able to write scalable, testable code? This is going to blow your mind. Check this out. So you know how in object-oriented programming, we write interfaces, right? So you have interface for, I don't know, what's something that, I don't want to use dog, screw that. Let's use, I don't know, like something is draggable, right? So what responsibility should it have? This role of something that's draggable. So maybe drag, right? Or start dragging. Something like that. Or set drag boundaries. Stuff like that, whatever. You set the responsibilities for what something should do, or should be able to do. And now if something cannot do these things, it's no longer that. So I was asking myself this other question. All right, what is a professional developer? What are the responsibilities of a professional developer? What should they be able to do? What should they know how to do? What should a confident developer that knows how to write scalable code, what is it that they need to know? What skills do they need to have? This is how I came to answer the question of the 80/20 of software dev. So yeah, it's great to know aggregates. Sure, it's great to know all these different things. But at the end of the day, what we're trying to figure out here is, what is the minimum amount of topics? What is the minimum amount of skills and capabilities that you need as a human being to play the role of a professional developer? Because, and this is also from RD, we are just actors who play roles, right? So at the end of the day here, if you are a human being, you are playing several different roles. And if you're a developer, you want to be playing that role of the professional developer. And that's pretty much the same thing as implementing an interface. Now, what happens in object-oriented programming or any that has interfaces and contracts? What happens when you don't implement the contract? Weird things happen. or if it's not strictly typed, it doesn't even compile. So a lot of us are not really implementing this interface of professional development because a lot of us don't even know what is in this interface of professional development, right? A lot of us are not even aware of that because it's hard to find that. So how did I find this? Actually, I didn't realize this, but I found this book called Essentialism, right? And I found this much later, actually. I didn't realize this, but essentially what was happening here was essentialism is about, oh, you know what? Here's how I'm going to explain this to you. Because I'd even go here. I found this much later. I found this much, much later. So this is one of my favorite things to do. This thing that I'm holding in front of you, hopefully everyone could see this. This is hilarious. What is this? Just type in the chat. What is this thing I'm holding? It's a mug, right? Okay. What's the purpose of this? Liquid container. Daniel starts laughing. I've done this to Daniel like 9 times. Code energy. Yeah, okay, so to contain the elixir of life, right? So what's the purpose? Some might say it's to hold liquids, right? Then I go, all right, why don't I just get a glass, right? What's the difference between a mug and a glass? What is like the essential purpose? What's the difference? Then you say with a glass, you can see through it, but I guess like it's about holding hot liquids. It's okay. What property, what form, what are the forms of this that gives me the ability to hold hot liquids? Ah, it's the handle, isn't it? The handle is the thing that gives me the ability to hold hot liquids. Okay, now what happens if I take away the handle and I have to hold it like this? Is it still fulfilling its purpose? Maybe, depends on the material. This happens to be pretty solid material. So it actually happens to be that there's 2 essential forms here that are required in order for this thing to serve its purpose of holding hot liquids. There's the solid ceramic and there's the handle. You take away one of those things and it lessens its ability to meet the essential purpose. The handle is made to be gripped. That's my best quote, I think. I've not said anything good past that. So yes, there's 2 essential properties of this. So this made me realize that here's where I was walking around. If anyone's ever seen It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, it's that scene where he's like going crazy. He's got like all the pages on his walls. You guys like don't understand. It's like this. I was like that guy talking about like cups and mugs, looking at like talking about like forms and how there's like forms to everything and how you could find the purpose of things by stripping away and removing qualities. And that really is important, that whole element of stripping away things that don't matter. So if we apply this to the front end space and we think about the frameworks and libraries that are out there, I often ask myself, what is the purpose of this? What is this thing good at? With these new frameworks and libraries and tools, what is like the purpose of this? What makes this really good? And what we find is that oftentimes a lot of these tools are good for going fast. Their purpose is actually just to build very quickly. At least that's the style in which a lot of developers tend to use them. And if that is what we are going to say is their essential purpose, then they're incredible at that, right? They're really good at doing that. Some of these new frameworks out there, you could just fire stuff up super quick. And I think that's great for certain styles of playing this game of software development. But you need to know how to play the game in different styles. You don't speed run every single game you play, do you? You don't. So this takes me to another topic, which I believe I have some images over here to show you. Where would that be? Oh, it's on the other page. Yes. The sausage factory you guys are seeing, how it's all built, how it's all made. So at the end of the day, what's happening here is software development is like a sport. in my opinion, because we want to make things work. We want to introduce value, but we also want to be able to continually introduce value over time. Now, I'm going to take this away for a second, just so that you can be with me here on this. But what happens when we build something fast once? You'll get it done for sure. You'll get the first thing done. That's great. But then what happens next week when you need to build another feature and another feature and another feature and then another one? Damn, it's taken a long time to build features now. We're struggling. The reason why we're struggling is because you don't actually know what's valuable. Development is a guess at the end of the day. It is not something that you know the answers to. And somebody here said feedback loop, and that's incredibly correct. That's one of the main things that we're going to learn. That's actually the second principle. The first two core principles of this whole thing I call software essentialism is number one, software essentialism, which is just, can we begin to understand what this game of software development even is? Can I understand this from first principles? Can I be like Aristotle for a second here and metaphysically understand what this is, who I am and what I'm doing in this world of playing this game of software development? I ask this question, like, I love philosophy, and I think that if you're a software developer, you are an abstraction designer. And if you're an abstraction designer, you need to understand the way you think. And you need to have some level of understanding the way you think so that you can understand how others think. This is just a kind of a huge thing here, but if we go all the way back down to the nature of what it is we're doing, there's this topic in philosophy called phenomenology. And dude, I'm not trying to go too deep into philosophy here because I don't want to put you guys to sleep, but phenomenology is the study of phenomena and experience. This is about how you experience the world, right? And if we go to this level, another related topic is existentialism, that's another thing. But phenomenology is the study of experience. So I'm like, all right, where do we start if we want to go all the way back down to first principles? I'm like, all right, I'm here. I'm in the world. Okay, I'm real. Yeah, I feel good right now. Damn, I don't feel so good right now. What just happened? Okay, so there was a state change between feeling good and then not feeling good. That's troublesome. I want to be in feeling good. Let me stay there. I don't like when I don't feel good. Let's do that. How can we do that? Or, oh my God, I have to edit this thing. This thing's going to take forever to edit, right? People are already dropping off. I'm feeling bad because I'm talking about philosophy. Damn, I got to close this page, right? So what happens here is there's state changes is a fundamental starting place for understanding what it is that we do in software design. And some of a fellow named David Piano on Twitter, he's always saying, it's state machine, guys, it's state machines. He's right. It is all state machines. It truly is. Because, yeah, whoops. You're in state A, which is an undesirable state, and then you really want to be in state B, which is a more desirable state. And what happens is once you move from state A to state B, and this is you as a human being, once you move from there to there, what happens here? What gets created when you do this? Value. This is value. And this is the starting point of software essentialism, and this is where everything begins. When I started mentoring the students in the program, they're like, hey, excited, let's get into some code, yo. Let's do this. I'm like, yeah, that's great. So mugs. That's how it starts. It's like we have to start here first because the goal is I want you to go from code first to domain-driven design and pattern-first thinking to responsibility-driven to get rid of all of that to first principles. And you could actually skip all of that by just starting at first principles. So stop. Yeah, I was a philosophy nerd when we talked about mugs. So it's like our goal here really is to become first principle driven developers. We want to be able to maneuver any situation in any environment, in any context. We want the next library or framework to come out and be like, oh, okay, cool. Oh, interesting way that they've designed out their control styles. It's interesting. I see. All right. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm probably not going to couple that here because this is not. This level of thinking is required in order for us to at least understand the responsibilities, but then to go even deeper to know, okay, what architecture should we use? Or what design decisions should we use at this very moment for this particular type of problem? Should we go fast right now because we need to go fast? Or should we back up and should we use more tests? Should we make sure that we cover more ground? This first principles level of thinking is what gives you the confidence to actually be able to know what we are actually going to need to start to drive things in a different direction. So yeah, this is how you know the different styles of development that you want to play, is by becoming a first principles driven thinker. Instead of just a code first one or pattern first one, it's actually to descend away from code and then come back up to code from a holistic point of view. And this is what happens at the end of the day. So if this is what value is, this is how we get value, what is this really in terms of like time? Or so I just literally gave it away. It is time, sorry. This is time here. And now, from state A to state B, right? Let's do a concrete example here, because this is also another way that we can really understand. Let's say I wanted to meet a friend for coffee, because I love coffee, because I'm a philosophy nerd. How can I do that? Let's say without technology, what do I need to do? Or let's just say in one particular way. So let's go meet a friend for coffee. Let's say ask a friend to come out for coffee. Actually, schedule a coffee date. That's a good one. So all the things that are required for me to do that. Oh, okay, find time on their calendar, call them, find time on their calendar, remind them, follow up with them, all those different things. And what's going to happen is we're going to go from A to B, and it's going to take time. It's going to take effort. And that's actually going to, anytime I use time in ways I don't want to, value goes down negatively. And this happened to me a couple days ago. I tried to send an email out to everybody on my new course platform I'm on, Kajabi. And I took all my emails from my old provider, chucked them in there, and I tried to blast out an email. And it let me get that far. But then once I did that, it went, you're a spammer. What do you mean I'm a spammer? They're like, oh, you're a spammer. We're shutting off all your emails. All your transactional and marketing emails are turned off. What? I'm launching a course. Sorry. Contact support takes 4 days for them to turn my stuff on. And what happened there was negative value, because what they saw was this sequence of events. They saw added 2,000 emails. They saw that. They saw created campaign, right? And then they saw sent, right? And then their model of their system looked at those sequence of events and it said, you're spammer, disabled, sending. It did those things, those sequence of events in that pattern. Now, of course, that would be good in order to catch a lot of spam, but what they didn't see was all the other events that happened before that, like me doing all these things that could not me not being a spammer. So my experience of using their system was like ultimately like negative value. So what I'm trying to get at here is we experience we experience things in terms of like different states through time. This is how we experience value, is state changes. And this is one of the main points here. Starting recording now. I guess we're gonna see. I'll let you know, disclaimer, by the way, even if this doesn't record, I have a training video where I go over all of this. It's just editing it is taking me some time. I'm going to edit it tonight and then send it out regardless, even if this doesn't record the way we want it. So for everyone that's here, you're going to get access to that, and you're going to get access to a discount on the course as well. So don't worry about it, but we'll see. All right. Anyways, this just, this really just tuned in. Whoever was really here watching and listening is really here now because they're coming back in. So yeah, at the end of the day, we have state changes, right? And the thing about state changes is there's facts that are involved, and these facts are events. So this is first principles. Like, this really truly is first principles in terms of what is going on here behind the scenes. And unless you realize this as a developer, you're always going to take design decisions that are as if you are trying to fit a square-shaped object into a circle-shaped hole. What I mean by that is I wrote a blog post some time ago called Why You Want to Use Event-Driven Architectures and Move Away from Just REST or CRUD. Why event-based architectures? Here's the mind-blown moment, because reality is inherently event-driven. So if you want to be able to continue to respond to guesses, because at the end of the day, like, Discord thought what they were doing was a good idea by, I don't know, closing this out. Maybe they thought I was not going to be in here for that long. I don't know. Whatever it was they thought was that guess. And there's several layers of guesses. There's actually the level of making the guess at the value level. Whoops. Sorry, let's go here. Sorry, there's like the problem level of making a guess. Then there's this ideal solution, like the logical solution of making the guess. Then there's the architectural solution of making the guess, right? And all of these here, right, they all feed into each other. And at the end here, what do we have? We have a guess about what's valuable, right? So they're like, oh, we're going to have this feature with stages, and it's all a guess. And they go, okay, cool. Let's make that guess here. We think they're going to love that, getting shut out of their call. Okay, let's assume they didn't know that was going to happen. Let's assume that was a bug, okay? So let's assume that they thought the call was just going to be good. So they made this guess, and the guess is, what is the stages? People can use, it's like speakers can speak in stages. And let's give a concrete, like, we would turn this into a concrete example of Khalil's blah, blah, blah. Have a very concrete example of what that's going to be. And this is like the solution, right? So the problem is trying to connect to teach a Discord audience. And the solution is Discord stages. Profit. That's what they thought. Then like, okay, how's that going to work? And here's where they do the architecture thinking. And spoiler, this is one of the essentials. actually, each of these is kind of part of the essentials. This is one of the main essentials, and this is strategic design. All of this stuff here. This is actually strategic design, one of the key essentials. And this is also, if we were to break all of this down, oh, I see what's going on here. This is all in the theoretical right now, right? So that's all theoretical. They think that's good. Now it's going to cross over, though, into what? The physical. And this is the real world. So they have the architectural idea, right? Then they got to deploy it. And why am I drawing a link between all of these? Because they all are inherently linked, and they all are inherently feedback loops unto themselves and feedback loops unto the stuff before them, right? They all truly are. So we get into deployment, and then we get into this system, like the end-to-end acceptance E2E test, right? And this keeps going deeper and deeper, but I'm going to go to this level right here, my favorite level, which is the application layer. And the thing about this application level, which makes this so awesome, is this is where you figure out a lot of your edge cases. Edge cases go here. That's where you sort out a lot of these. And you could do it in a really fast way with mocks and stubs. Show the students how to do that. You'll learn how to do that in the course. But what happened here? They have all these feedback loops going from here, looks great, into the physical here. Now, we don't really know what happened, right? But if they had better feedback looping going on, there's also one other one in between this called the execution space. Execution feedback loop. And this gives meaning to that. Right? And then after it's done, this keeps going a little bit deeper on, but after it's done, then it gets executed. And then we start executing it. And then what happens in production is more feedback too. Oh, now we have a new problem. So they have a new problem, which is Khalil's mad at them for what just happened. And we don't want this to keep happening. So yeah, it's all feedback loops at the end of the day. Invested in amazing skit on how the entire world is async and message driven. Yeah, awesome. I love that. It really truly is. So where am I going at with this thing here? Yeah, it's all feedback loops, and we want to make sure that we are being aware of what those feedback loops are, number one, and then also if we are confirming and validating our guesses throughout those feedback loops. Because most of the time, and here's where I'll pull it back now, and we'll start maneuvering through the rest of this. This was like a massive detour. But yeah, because when you're just working code first, you just tend to do one, just make it work, and it's out. Make it work, and then but there's none of that feedback loop in general. And not only is there not several feedback loops, but there's only one loop. We pretty much just jump from problem to building it to execution, and that's it. And there's no feedback looping in here at all. So let's see, what else do I have in here? All right, brilliant. So that's some of the big picture here. We want to focus more on skills instead of tools and titles because this stuff is a lie. And the main skill here is the skill of being a first principles driven thinker, because that's really what's going to give us the ability to maneuver into all these different environments. And I want to pull up this image again because it's so delicious, in my opinion. Right. The three ways. So this is not a new topic, by the way. If anyone here has read, what is it, the Phoenix Project, or there's another one, the DevOps Hand Guide, even continuous delivery, even Agile, even XP, all of these things are saying, they're all about the same thing, which is, and this is why I say first principles and not Agile, not XP, not DevOps, not this, that, is because we want to come back to first principles and think about what is it we're doing? Why are we doing it? Why is it valuable? How is it valuable? How can we make sure that it's valuable? and how can we make sure that we know when it's not valuable, and what are the different levels at which it could go wrong and not be valuable. And there's a lot of those. And those are all the several different feedback loops. So instead of just doing one massive loop, we actually do this several times and we get the feedback, and we're constantly refining that so that we can continue to make more guesses faster, or even just keep those guesses consistently. And this is truly the only way that I have found in reality to write software where it gets better instead of worse over time. There's just not any other way. It's just going against the fabric or going against the grain of reality to think otherwise. Now, does this mean you need to write tests all the time? Do you need to test drive everything? No, of course not. But you need to have the capacity and the ability and the awareness to know how you could and know when you should. Because if you are, let's say you're someone like Peter Levels, who's an entrepreneur, and you want to just build something quickly over the weekend to validate your guess to see if people are going to use it. What are you going to do? Are you going to TD your way through each and every single level? Probably not. Why not? Because you haven't validated that it's worthwhile to do that yet. Now, as soon as you cross that gap of making it work, it works. Someone puts money in. It is now producing value for people. You change over to playing a very different game. You're no longer playing the speedrun game anymore. Now you're playing the game of consistently stacking the bricks of value. It's a very different game to play. And that's what takes skills, not tools, to play. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna actually just quickly look at some of the comments here. Do you have a fleshed out diagram of this? Yes. Of which thing in particular? The feedback loopy. I have several diagrams, and I could create them as well. The guess, physical. Yeah, I have something here. I'll actually post it in the chat for you guys. I do that. Let me see if I could do that real quick, fast. Boom, blast. Yeah, let me just go grab this. Hopefully I don't get kicked out of this. Yeah, here you go. This is a good one. Boom. Check that out. I'll put that in the chat, and I'll also put another image in the chat that's going to be useful for later on too. So what that thing is, actually here. I'll put this one here too. This one's pretty handy. We're going to get into this. And what's this? Yeah. And for good measure, I might as well drop 3 ways in there too. Let's just go ahead and export this. Yeah. Okay, let's progress along here. And then I'm going to shift into some Q&A soon. Let's see. Now, the next few slides here, I've been running short on time this past few days, but the next few slides were just a bunch of like myths that I wanted us to make sure that we talk about, because I found that they are pretty detrimental to being able to make progress, and they hold a lot of people back. Also, if you're struggling with getting these images, I will have them elsewhere for you as well. Someone just remind me later on to get that, and I could get anyone what they need after this. So here's one of the first mistakes. It's expecting that your job is going to give you the experiences that you want and need as a developer. So does anyone with this? Maybe you don't want to say because maybe your boss is watching. Yeah. I thought myself that when I graduated from school, I thought it was going to be awesome. I'm going to get out there, I'm going to start working for real, and I'm going to learn everything I need to learn. But then I started working as a front end developer eventually at this one company, and it just turned into a mess. And this is the story. Here's the story actually I hear all the time. Okay, start out as front end, feels amazing to just finally take all those months of learning and practicing how to use React, Redux, and stuff together at a job. You get to the job, its code base is just a complete mess. There's no tests, or there are tests, but it's like snapshot tests with end-to-end stuff with Cypress, but those tests are super flaky for some reason. No one's confident in the tests. No one wants to change the infrastructure, change the architecture because everyone's scared of how to do it. There's like this generalized hum of anxiety behind the scenes. It's just not a good situation. New features are coming in. Oh, they keep changing the requirements, man. The requirements keep changing. Bruh, like, again, as you all know now, it's a guess. They're supposed to change. It's continually making guesses. It's if you go to I'll equate this to, imagine you go to take your car in to get your winter tires changed, and they're like, bro, they keep coming in and asking to get their winter tires changed, man. It's like, yo, that's what's supposed to happen. What are you saying? Why are you getting mad? They can't make up their mind about what the customer can't make up their mind about what they want. Yeah, it's a guess. You're a developer, a software developer. Again, this is the role of the software developer, is to help meet the guesses. And the thing on the deadline, yeah, meeting them on a deadline too, that's a whole other thing. But once you are aware of what your role is as a developer, it's hard to stay firm and argue about things if you're not even certain about one, how to work consistently and repeatably. Because also imagine you go to get your tires changed, and imagine that the person who is changing your tires, they're trying out different frameworks and libraries of changing tires like on every customer, and they don't have one kind of repeatable way to work where they can consistently be like, yeah, it takes this long. No, try arguing with someone who's going to change your tire. It's, hey, can you get it done faster? Nah, tires take this long to change, sorry. Yeah, but the thing is, yeah, but I'm sorry, like, you got some way to make tires take longer, like less time to change? No. Okay, me neither. Okay. Okay, cool. So I'll see you at 4. That's the experience you want to have as a developer, but it requires making your work a repeatable thing so that it feels like a trade, not it feels like you're constantly experimenting all the time. You don't want that feeling. And spoiler alert, I'm going to teach you how to make it feel like a repeatable thing instead of something that feels like you're experimenting all the time. So yeah, anyways, like you end up in that situation. Everyone's checked out. No one wants to keep working anymore. You think about doing things like rewrites. I learned that Uber was like rewritten from scratch, I think the first time, because they had to, in order for them to go from Uber to Uber and Uber Eats, it's like they had to kill the app, if I'm correct, if I read that correctly. Which I think of, imagine you have a house and you just want to add an extra garage, but you have to tear down the entire house to also add a garage. Bruh. Not ideal. So the problem is there's not a whole lot of mentorship out there. I didn't have any mentors, and even when there were mentors, like I remember when I used to work at IBM, it seems like the people who could mentor me were always 10 minutes deep in calls with clients and 10 layers deep in VMs, and they were just like carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders. So it was hard to get some guidance. And even when they could mentor me, because they were at like a level 9 in their thinking, try dropping down to like a level 2 to help someone. Try dropping down in your thinking from a level 2 to get someone to level 3. It's really hard to do, which is why if anyone's tried to read the Domain Driven Design Blue Book and you've struggled, the man's at a level 10, writing like a level 10. It took me so many reads of that book. Even if I like reading it today, I still get new learnings from that book because it's so hard to read. So I found that there's 2 situations that realistically happen here. There is the first situation where you do have experts around to help, but they can't really teach you, so they just do it themselves, and you don't really learn anything. And the situation two, which is, I think I wrote about this in the book, where actually from Eric Elliott, he said you have the blind leading the blind, and you have 3/4 of developers being self-trained, and 1/4 of them being very not well trained in solid software design, testing, and architecture fundamentals. Yeah, it's just generally a bad situation. And I found that the job is not going to give you the experience you really truly want and need. And I was going home struggling and feeling overwhelmed every day about returning to a failing code base, a code base I knew was going to fail. So yeah, my story is I had those experiences. I spent a ton of time reading the books, studying the experts, the foremost developers, which I call them, and it cost me a lot of time and money to do that. And as now, we have some new foundations of reality to build from, and it made me realize that it's not even practice makes perfect, it's perfect practice makes perfect, because you could grind a lot of different stuff. You could grind learning this language, that language, and this framework, this tool, and be stuck in the same spot. Not fun. Next mistake was thinking code first. We already talked about this. I used to think about solving problems starting from the code. The progression here you want is to think code first, like the natural progression. I call these the phases of Craftship. You go code first, patterns, or domain-driven design, patterns, responsibility-driven design, and then if you're apt in your thinking, you will get to first principles. And that's my natural progression. That's been my progression. Although we've just learned about a lot of first principles stuff, and I think that's where we want to start for the most part. So there's a lot of laws to, there's so many laws here about just reality. Like, for example, I'll give you one great example. How many times does this happen where you have a requirement where it's like, hey, yeah, after this, like after they send out billing, or after they put in their billing information, make sure that this thing happens next. Or, okay, well, after they do this, make sure it sends an email. Or after this happens, then that. After this, then that. Or before this, then that. You hear the way that we're talking about implementing requirements? Do you notice that this sounds very event driven? After this, then that. When this, then that. So those are some fundamental things to be aware of. And it's from here that it's going to create a really good starting point for your architecture, for the way that you work, for the way that you maneuver your work. And it's from those laws that I've put together those 12 principles. Like, for example, if you wanted to decouple that, instead of adding what should happen after a feature to the end of, let's say, an express controller, which will just turn into a massive mess. Forget what number essential this is, but there's an essential principle I call temporal decoupling, which is to decouple features from each other using events. And that is the foundation of Redux. It's foundation of event-driven architectures. It's a foundation of event storming. It's a foundation of reality, and it's the way that we should be maneuvering our work if we want to be aligned with reality and be able to play the game of software development well. Not decoupling from infrastructure. Okay, I think if you're in this community, you're probably aware of what I mean by this. I would hope. If there's anyone here that doesn't know what I mean by this, totally cool, but let me know, because this is like huge. And personally, when I figured out how to do this, that's when testing got fun. That's when testing went from being really not fun to fun. I'm so friggin' happy to hear that, Zima. Yes. Yes. Exactly. The reason why testing sucks oftentimes is because we're trying to test everything as this one big glob. And you also need to apply several different approaches to testing. here's something I've taught the students, which is that there's just three main different approaches to verify things. There's, okay, this is actually a good detour. This is probably one of the most useful things I'll teach you guys today. Yeah, this is a good one. Flashback to using Figma for everything, literally even code samples, teaching the students. All right. So this is essential number, I think this is essential number 3, which I call subject verification. And the idea is, depending on where you are in the feedback loop process, there's different types of verification you need to do. So if I asked you to do like test FizzBuzz, all right, and this was just like a simple function, or let's do palindrome instead. I love that one. Mom. Palindrome. That's literally one word. What am I doing? And this is going to give you true or false, right? What's happening here is, again, it's just simple systems thinking. It's probably one of my favorite topics this year is just systems thinking. It's inputs and outputs. Input, output. So what feedback loop level are we probably running this at? This is a stateless problem, because if we're going to solve this, we could just do this in a function that doesn't really need any state. So what happens is, where's my thing? You insert this text, and what are you going to get as an output? You're going to get a result. And how are you going to verify that? One of the 3 ways you could verify that is result verification. And this is the type of verification that most people are familiar with. So if I was writing this as like a jest test, here's the way I would test this. Easy peasy, right? Everybody gets this? That's pretty straightforward, right? Now that's great because when you're doing this at this level, like the domain level, the furthest level down possible, which is, yes, I call this, I don't have a great image here for you guys on that one actually just yet, but when you're doing this at the stateless level, there's no state is being held, so you could just look at what comes out because it's just input output. Because the model here, this is a model. The model truly is stateless. Now, let's take this a little bit further. Stateful. Let's imagine that I asked you to build tic-tac-toe now. Aha. So tic-tac-toe. And I'm like, the test is, I want you to confirm in your test that once the test completes, or no, I want you to confirm in the test that the player 2 comes after player 1. Actually, even better, that the test is going to be that you cycle between player 1 and player 2. That's what I want to test. So it and cycle player 1, P1, and P2. How would you test that? It's not stateless anymore because tic-tac-toe is going to be, let's say it's one solid object, right? So you do new game. You now have a game that is representing everything here. So this actually is now holding state. So you can't really do the exact same type of verification because there's no like output. So it cycles between player 1 and player 2. How are you going to test that? That's where the next form of verification, state verification, comes into play. And to do this, I do this thing I call programming by wishful thinking, which means you work backwards I think backwards and I imagine how it could work. So I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna expect that game dot, I guess, getting the current player. I might call it, let's just say P1 or get current player. I'm going to hope that getting that is going to return P1. Of course, that would fail, and then but that would give me the API or what I need to do. Okay, what needs to be true? What is essential to be true before that, so that that would have been true? So again, it's coming back to this idea of essentialism and thinking. What is the minimal amount of things that need to happen in order for this to be true? This way of thinking like just permeates like everything that we do, because again it's coming back to the first principles of things. The answer here would probably be something like, okay, move once, move again. So and then this would be P1 doing their move, and this would be like P2 doing their move or whatever. It's not exactly how I designed the API, just giving you the point. But what you're seeing here is this form of verification is what's happening is you're actually reaching into the model, because we have little tiny pieces of state now that are being stored in the model, like current, this, that, this, that, this, that. And we're not getting like a direct output anymore. It's not like a direct input. What's the output? Instead, what we're doing is, okay, we do all the inputs, and then we're saying the output is actually more of a, hey, can you tell me like what this is? Like, I'm looking for this thing. Could you tell me what it is? It's like an ask now. And that's the second form of verification you could do. The last one is communication verification, although I'm just checking time and I don't think I should be going too deep into this right now. So I'll tell you real quick. The last one is to see the way that the model interacts with other models. So this is going to communicate with other models, and the output is actually going to be seeing how this guy talks to the other guys. And you actually want to be verifying that instead. So that's going to be communication verification. All right, let's flip back up here so I could get to some Q&A real quick, because we're going deep on that. Let's see what else is important to talk about. So yeah, you want to decouple from infrastructure because it gives you more testing abilities, more testing options, and it's important to know those. Oh boy, hopefully nobody here is thinking that they're doing functional programming because they're using functions. You guys get this, right? If you don't, that's cool. It is hard. True functional programming is very hard, and it's just not the way that we think. It's great. It's absolutely great. Yeah, this pervades the React community. I'm going to dive into the whole React community. I'm going to dive in rough and literally fisticuffs up and get this solved once for all. It's not functional. It's not. Oh god, just because we're using arrow functions. Yeah, this is a Craftship community, so a lot of what at least object-oriented programming is, and maybe a little bit about what functional programming is, but at the end of the day, we're doing, what is computing for? What is software for? What's the purpose of software in general? It's to solve problems, and to do that, there's three things required. We need to deal with data, we need to deal with behavior, and we have namespaces, which is how we organize those things, right? So again, it's this input, output. The input, what goes in here is data, and where does behavior happen? Behavior happens here. And we may have 30 of these, right? Like just a ton of these, go crazy with it. And the namespaces really are just how we're going to choose to organize those things, right? That's computing. That's what we're doing here. Now, each paradigm has a different way to do it. So with object-oriented programming, we are doing this in a way where we have these objects that talk to each other and communicate with messages. Structured programming, it's literally just unstructured. It's just procedural modules, just step by step, going through your code step by step. And in functional programming, there is no concept of step by step. It's literally applying things. It's functions. You build this model of functions and then you pipe data through it. So I like to think of it as like piping things into each other, or literally like math functions. A great example I give is if you want to make a cake, you could say it in the human way, which is, okay, do this and then do that and then do that and then do that. The non-human way to do this, the functional way to do this, is say, oh, a cake is 400 degrees of this applied to icing applied to this. I can't understand what you're trying to tell me. But that's functional programming. That's a way to think about functional programming in general. It is a pipeline, or like water flowing through these pipelines. It's really beautiful and elegant, and as a result, we don't have to deal with state. We don't actually have to go and check, hey, is this stuff good? Is all this stuff good in here? Like test as you're building your model, because we don't really have this over here. We don't have this model. Like, actually, I'll take this. Right? And let's put a boundary on that. If this is like the way that everyone is coding, where you have state inside of this model, with functional programming, you take all this state out. It's over here. Get rid of that. And the model is just like that. And what you're doing is, all right, let's take the data and pipe it in and out. So really, with pure functional programming, you actually get a really beautiful, you get back to the stateless thing. But they say functional programming is stateless. Yeah, think back to our palindrome thing. It really is stateless. Data comes in, and we get in a result out pretty much. It's beautiful. At least this is the core of your code. But damn, is that ever hard to do. And unless you're doing this, and unless you're thinking this way, you're doing this, and you're introducing state. And do you remember from earlier, maybe if you were here, we were saying, well, actually, like anytime something's broken, it's like, what's going on? Why is this thing not working? Why is my router not working? You turn it off, you turn it back on. There's some sort of state problem, probably. Some state got out of sorts. There wasn't a test to make sure that that state didn't get out of sorts in the way that it needed to stay in sorts. So if you're writing code like this, you're dealing with state. And as soon as you introduce state, means you'd need to have tests to cover it if you care about it being covered. And because you have state at various different levels, that gives purpose to the reason why we want to make sure that we test at various different levels. That's why we want to make sure that we are writing tests at this level and that level, because there's various different forms of state that live at each of those different levels, not just on the outside, as if we were doing a purely functional approach, which would have been beautiful if we could. But what you lose in, or introduce in statefulness, you lose in your ability to cognitively communicate these ideas, I find, because it's not really common. We don't really grow up thinking that way, unless you're a math genius. Not learning how to write the test first. Do I even need to go into this one? What I will say about writing the test first is it's hard. Oh, you know what I will say is, okay, I want to alleviate some pressure here for everyone. Testing is hard. Testing is hard. Learning how to test is hard. It requires an incredible amount of mastery to learn how to write tests. If anyone says testing is easy, get out of here. Stop. This is why you tell React developers, just write tests. Start writing tests. How do you start writing tests? It's not easy to learn to just start writing tests, let alone writing useful tests. Now, anytime something is really hard in life, we tend to not really want to take the path of most resistance. If you could just write code and not have to deal with, if you could just write code and you don't have to actually deal with tests and you get your work done, and you struggle with tests and it feels bad to struggle with tests, you're going to stop wanting to write tests. And you're just going to be like, oh, I don't need tests anyways. You don't, because you've been able to make it work. And it ends right there. And if you're a developer who's just working at a job and you don't mind spending 8 hours a day coding into the screen, fixing bugs along the way, debugging, refreshing, change code, refresh, change code, refresh, change code, because you're going to be there anyways and you're getting paid by the hour, you're also not going to really care about writing tests first because you're getting paid for being there and you could do it and the job will get done. Now let's switch it around. If you're an entrepreneur and you're making money from your app and you have almost no time because you have other things you need to do, and you heard that writing the test first is something that would allow you to have less bugs, spend almost no time in a debugger, give you a consistent process to write code every time, and it would improve your design and guide your design. And by the end, you would have these tests and you'd have this resilience and flexibility in the long term as well. Yes, it would take some more time up front, but it's going to save you so much more time. If you're an entrepreneur and you're thinking like that, are you going to take on the journey of probably wanting to learn how to write tests? Very likely you will, because you don't want to be woken up in the middle of night, or you don't want customers calling you telling you, yo, this thing's not working, when you're literally trying to do other things. It's like the worst. So we tend to go down roads that have least resistance. But I want you to realize that you don't have an option anymore. Sorry if that sounds like doomsday-like, but I would say this is probably the turning point from just writing code, just code first, to shifting over to becoming a professional, which is, you know that when your work is done, it's done right. And you also know that when you take shortcuts, you know the implication of taking shortcuts, and you make those shortcuts pragmatically, which means sometimes you may leave confidence gaps in and not fill in some of these feedback loops, and that's okay. But you know how to ideally how to get to a test coverage level that is pretty close to 100% if you had the time, all the time in the universe. The problem is with not knowing how to do that and just not doing any of it. So that's a really big problem. And also, I would just wager, like, we're in this day and age now where a lot of people can get quickly in there writing code and get a job in 2 months if you want. And you could just be writing React code at a job within 2 months. And that kind of changes the game competition-wise, in my opinion. We also have ChatGPT now, which is pretty good for just making things work once. But again, this is not a speed run game. This is actually a game of longevity. It's a game of, how do I consistently improve the business? How do I consistently make sure that any time I spend here, things are getting better and they're not getting worse? That is the skill of scalability. And I think having that ability is what will make you an incredibly valuable developer. So I could say so much more on that, but I won't. Don't neglect object-oriented design. You need it. We talked about that earlier. I'm going to skip that. And you want a consistent development workflow. You can't be winging it every time. We also talked about that too. And I have something here that I said I was going to talk about real quick. And this might be the last thing I'll discuss before I go into Q&A, and then we could get a little more targeted with the questions. The last thing I wanted to discuss was something I call FASTER, which is a framework for actually learning how to learn to test. Okay, so here, let's get into this real quick. Now, I'm going to just go over this thing here. As I mentioned, we are making guesses, and we have various different levels here. We have the theoretical level, where we're aligning ourselves to what the problem is and carving out an idea for how to build it. Then we have the physical layer, or the physical aspect of implementing, I guess, where we have to build, you actually have to get an architecture up, design an ideal architecture based on the problem, deploy it. You also need things to be composed together. You have your end-to-end tests, you have your use case tests, you have your unit tests, you have all of your infrastructure and making this thing work. So that's the physical realm of this, right? Now, you want to learn how to test at each of these different levels. You want to learn to test from here and here, but you also want to set up deployment infrastructure to know that if this runs in production, it's going to run similarly to the way that it's running on my computer. And you also want to have feedback loops as to when this thing is actually out in the wild and have some observability as well. So it's all this. How do we do this full and full? How do we learn how to do this full and full at various levels of the stack? That's the question now. If that's what we want, that's what the question is. And I believe it is what we want. I think you do too. So how do you learn this? The way you learn this is to start at the deepest level in, which is the stateless level. So when I showed you the palindrome thing, this is where everyone should be starting if you haven't begun learning testing. I actually just want to get away from saying testing, and this is really just called the feedback loop. It's what you're doing here is you're implementing feedback loops. So when people say TD or test-driven development, it is, but you're doing feedback loops at every single layer. So even if you were coming up if you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to validate your product, talking to customers, you're implementing the feedback loop. You're just doing it at a much different level of value. You're making much different guesses of value. So to learn this practice, you start all the way at the stateless level. And this image is actually better because this is going to align everything together. Once you get good at the mechanics of the test-driven development process, you'll start to learn about things like refactoring, just the basics of programming by wishful thinking, transformation priority premise, very basic things for you to just implement designs. Then you want to move up to stateful problems. As soon as we begin to do that, we need to make sure we have a very clear understanding of state machines as well and how that works. Now, as we go through and do this process of practicing at each of these levels, there's this thing I've invented here called faster. And this is a design method. And if you're not familiar with this, a design method is a way to create designs. It's a way to create designs. And it gives you a consistent approach. So I call it faster because anytime we start with any problem, we are going to do the same thing consistently. Whether I ask you to build something at the stateful level, at the unit test level, or I ask you to implement some acceptance tests at the end-to-end level, you're going to follow the exact same process. But if you know anything about systems thinking with the inputs and outputs, the only thing that's going to change is the environment that we run this at. So this is what will change. This is going to be your feedback loop level. But regardless of your feedback loop level, you're going to want to follow the same thing. You're going to still want to find, architect, automate, specify, test, and refine. So I'll give you a quick example of how I think about this for a couple of these levels here. I don't know, somebody pick one of these levels, one of these physical levels here. I'll first go with let's do the application one. Deployment, that's a fun one. I'm gonna go with application. I think that one's really fun. I'll do the simplest one first, actually. Unit test stateful. Let's see, let me get an example. Let's think of a stateful example here that we could do. We did the chess, we talked about the checkers or tic-tac-toe. Let's do that again. So find. So what is the inputs to this? The input is going to be the problem itself. This should not be like that. Okay, What's the output of find going to be? So find the examples. This is actually going to be the examples. We're going to be working against concrete examples here. So let's say this was tic-tac-toe. One of the examples, I'll give you an example of an example. Whoops. Given, let's say we are all, I would probably have to express this out. Given there's one move for for player one to win. When player one does the move to win, then they win and other things happen. Right? So that's one concrete example. You always want to start with the example because we're never going to fully understand this. And there's a middle part here at the model part, at the process part. So that's the in. And then right here, oh my God. Folks got to dip out. I'll send everybody I'll send everyone the recording, and I'll send you the clean recording because this has been like a raw one. I'll send you the next one I'm going to do as well. I just have to edit it. So thank you for coming. So what happens here is the model processes. And here's where we're going to apply skills. We do skills right here. And those, like this, actually, it's right here is where we're going to be learning all of the 12 essential skills. Each of these is going to introduce new skills that we need to learn in order to do this. And that precisely is what we're going to be learning in the Software Essentialist program. So for example, one of the skills here at this level, at this particular environment, because the way that we're running, this is a stateful environment. This is level 2. And anytime we're at level 2, the way that we solve this is going to be the exact same way. We want to use given, when, then, because we're working with the fabric of reality, which means we have to describe state A and describe what state B is, which is different than doing this at level 1, where there wouldn't necessarily be any initial state. Can you see why this is so complex? Can you see why this is so challenging to learn how to do testing? There's so much involved with knowing how to do this at the right level. There's different techniques. You can't use the same approach each way through because the level you're going to be running this at changes. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. So yeah, I'm probably not going to have time to go through all of this. So I just wanted to give you a teaser of what this is, how it works. There will be more on this. I'll also be releasing blog posts on this too, videos, but this is like the primary foundational tool we use in the program to learn how to do testing, to learn the 12 essentials, because this thing here it's a consistent, repeatable process. It's a consistent workflow you can use to solve problems at any level. So if you needed to now implement a new feature at work, like from the scratch, you'd probably be executing that feature at the end-to-end test level first of all. So you would come in here, you'd be like, all right, let me get to the E2E acceptance test level. How do we apply faster at that level to solve? So I think I'm going to leave it there for now on the presentation stuff. I'm going to shift over into Q&A talk, and yes, I'll leave it right there. I'll shift into Q&A talk. I'm going to explain the discounts. I'm going to explain a little bit about the program, and let's talk about pretty much anything else. You guys can ask me any questions you want to ask me. I'll be here for at least an hour on the video, and then I will be online all day, video editing and getting everything else I could get up now so that we can start getting everyone into the program and learning. Favorite Red Bull flavor. Yo, there's actually this new one. It's lime or something. I had like two of those, but I'm not recommending that to anyone. In fact, I'm quite ashamed of myself for that. So, just letting you know. So the program, yes. Yeah, so it's coming out. Well, pretty much it's ready. I just have to set up a couple of things. And then what I'm going to do is I have a form and I want everyone who's in here to, here we go. So there's 60% off on this program already, but because everyone who's in here, there's I think like around 100 people came in who were legitimately the OGs. So I'm actually going to give everyone in here who came in because they're the OGs an additional discount. So, and this is like an early adopter discount, so this is not going to be something I'm doing regularly. Yo, Jitter Ted, bro, I love your content, man. This is a Jitter Ted, you're TD OG. So if you would like to get a 15% discount on top of the discount I'm going to be giving out for this very limited time, put your email in there and I'm going to send everyone the link to go and do that with the code later on today. And then you should get that by today or later tonight. Yeah, man, there's not a whole lot of people teaching this stuff. And it's just personally life-changing for me. I think like making the link between hexagonal architecture and TD. Here's a good question. What is the purpose of a hexagonal architecture? The discount looks like it's behind a login. Yeah, so that link there is going to add you to a list where I can send you an email to get the 15% because it's not actually, I'm still throwing together the landing page. I have the sales page, but I'm throwing together the landing page. If you guys want the sales page, I could just send you straight to that, but I need to hook up the discount tonight too. So struck your email in that, and then I'm going to get you guys an additional. There's no input for email. Oh, what did I send you guys? Sign in. What the hell? Hold on a sec. Oh, yo, that's weird. Okay, hold on. Let me fix this. Oh, that's strange. All right, here you go. Take this. Negative value. Yeah, I see what happened there. Yo, negative value. I love that. Negative value. This redirects too? Nah, double negative value. All right, let me incognito this. So positive value? Oh shit, it actually really truly is. Oh, I see what's going on here. Bro, I actually hate Kajabi. Yeah, I see what's happening here. All right, while I get this sorted out, everybody bank your questions here, and then I'm gonna get to these. I saw a couple of good ones. I'm gonna go back up and the more redirects. Yeah, that's actually that's the math. That's how that works. Oh, okay, I see what's going on here. You can't submit a form like this. Yeah, if you redirect enough times, you actually get money, to be honest. I don't know if you know about that, but that's the another law. That's actually another law of the universe. Yeah. Yeah, Kajabi's giving us the best. Yo, when you get your course platform made, can you just send me the link so I can make battle rap Kajabi later and create a battle rap about against Kajabi and literally have that be the best. Yeah, this is terrible. All right, I'm gonna name this page negative value for everybody here. Let's see. Delete this block. Thanks, Kajabi. I love you. Let's add this form. All right. Boom. Get rid of this one. Add. Start shouting negative value. That's so stupid. I love it. Oh, I love it. I love it. All right, here we go. Q&A attendee form. Boom. Don't forget. I'm going to just put 2023, March 2023. Never forget negative value. My God. I love it. And let's see, that should do it. Save. And let's just edit this. What do you think we're going to call this, the URL of this page? Can anyone guess? Negative value. Yeah, let's see. Let's see if it works. Time to test this out. Let's try that. And let's go and see if that's working. Let's take a quick little peek. I'm part Irish. I'm allowed to do that, actually. Brilliant. Okay, let's go into this. All right, you geniuses. Yeah, I'm gonna send you a code soon as. All right, yeah, thank you. Everyone who's jumped in here, I really appreciate it. And just thanks for being a part of this community. Sweet. Okay, let's get into some questions. I'm so freaking hyped to talk to anyone who wants to hear. My ear off. And by the way, I think there's the ability to, if you want to ask or chat, I think you can somehow get access to become a speaker for a minute as well or something like that. I don't know. It's like Twitter Spaces or something. So I think that's like a feature. All right. By the way, and if you've asked the question from before and I didn't get to it, just chuck them down here. I'm going to just start answering them. Which books do you still recommend to read? I start from there. Your parallel of discourse. Yes, well, in my parallel of discourse, the books I'd like to read. Personally, like right now, for me, or that I recommend to others. I think is a better way for others. I'm going to answer this question like a essentialist, which is what do you want to accomplish? What's the purpose? Maybe start with essentialism. I'd recommend that one. And even better than that, if I could, I would recommend Aristotle's Metaphysics, but I don't want to recommend that because I like you guys. So I would say the next best thing would probably be Essentialism. One of my friends, Kane, started reading that book. By the way, I mentioned Scott Bellware is a very hard person to recommend things that he likes. He actually really loved that book. He messaged me, he's, bro, like I'm reading this book. I'm just nodding my head along the whole time. It's actually very good. Hard person to find to like books, and he's a very influential person to me personally. So I'd highly recommend checking out that book. Even for creating this Q&A today, I'm so short on time. I find myself doing the same thing where it's like I just shut up, I close my eyes and ask myself, what is absolutely essential? What is the purpose? What is the end state that I need to be in right now? What is the end? What does the reality look like that I need to be in at this current point in time? That might sound like you're writing the assert station of a jest test, but that's also how I maneuver life and maneuver what is important to do and what's not important to do. So it requires eliminating a lot of things. So I really like that book personally, just for trimming the fat and doing what's important. I would also say maybe programming book wise. I have some of my favorite programming books here behind me. Oh, here's one. Let's see. This one right here. That's a classic. That's a classic. Yeah, you can't go wrong with here. Oh, yes. Say some of the good ones, really good ones. I liked this one, Domain Modeling Made Functional, Scott Woloshin, absolute genius, like one of my favorite books of all time. This book is incredible too, with Tyus Novak. A lot of the stuff, like just pretty much decoupling your code into layers. Really good modern TD book. And this one, yeah, is just like an OG book. I would say my favorite thing from this book was probably the builders, learning how to do builders properly. This one's nice. This is a nice, cute book. It's his own sort of philosophy. It's his own sort of ideas for how to do design. I'd say probably my favorite topic in here is the modules should be deep, like deep modules. And you had something about like deep modules and fat interfaces and clients and something like that. It changed my thinking a little bit around API design. So I found that was cool. All right. How do you avoid boilerplate in the converting external types into, yeah, okay, that's a great question. Avoiding boilerplate in DD, converting to external types from database into internal types. Oh boy. Most of your time is spent writing conversion code. I remember when I was working at his consultancy, there was one really intelligent developer. There was a lot. What am I saying? But there was one that was really influential on me personally. And I remember maneuvering into his code base with him. He built out this like marine magnetics magnometer thing. And it was it was incredible. It's this desktop C# app. And he was showing me his code. I'm like, what's going on here? There's so much. Look at all these concepts you're typing out. This is like wild. And he told me the advice he gave me was like, sometimes, like, he's like, this, you get to a level where it just feels like it's just typing now. And I don't think that's bad. I don't think the problem you have here is actually a bad problem. It's just where is the seam between where should a contract be and where do you not need one? It's probably a better question. It's hard to give you like a straight up, like, how do you avoid this? I would probably want to see what it is you're doing and see exactly where the contract is. Also see how you're designing your aggregates, because a lot of the old stuff I wrote, especially too about designing aggregates, no bueno. Probably wouldn't do that today. Again, it's just data and behavior. And here's a hot tip. Where do aggregates come from? They come from your use cases. So you could have one aggregate for a use case, or you could begin to notice patterns in several use cases, and then you could refactor away what's common into an abstract class. And that would be like I've seen people use the for pattern, where it's like user for create user. So yeah, why don't we chat about that later? Hit me up. I'm curious to see what you're doing there. Asked this a bit earlier. How would you say that the part between input and output, aka the process logic, can almost be broken down into three primitives: commands, conditions, and loops, just different ways of arranging them? Input, output, processing logic. It depends on the level of which we are having the conversation about abstraction. So that model part, the part in the middle, so it's input, the model part in the middle, the output, what you can always know to be true is that programming is sequence, selection, and iteration. Those three things, always. And paradigms have different ways of implementing that. So that looks different in functional, looks different in object oriented. So a model is always going to have sequence, selection, and iteration. That is something we know to be true. So I would say it's not, I guess, if you take commands to be, yeah, I would say we're fundamentally agreeing on what we're saying here, it looks like. All right. So is there a part of the training that expands the human factor to align a team of, say, 30 devs to these practices? I would say not until I've gone and done that myself. I don't want to do any training on that. So not at the moment, no. It's we could definitely have part of the training be about aligning this to a team of, say, 5 devs, because that's something that makes sense. But the UX part of this is key and critical. For example, if you have SolidBook, you know that for people to know what to do is a feedback loop in and of itself. And that is discoverability, seeing all the options, and then understanding. So if you're not aware of what you need to be aware of in order to discover, if you're not aware of your own developer use cases, you're not really going to have the ability to know how to expand the team out in general. If you're not aware of the natural tendencies or even just psychological principles like the path of least resistance, like these are things that I personally picked up being a DX person, is noticing what people tend to do and how people tend to not do. The simple mental model is people move away from pain and move towards pleasure. So as you're writing code and as you're designing out your team and as you're designing out your code base, you want to be very well aware of where are you introducing pain and where are you making things easy, and where are you, and to make things easy, there are some UX principles we'll be using. The part of the program that's based on this is the part that's about the scalable architecture fundamentals, and that is the part where we do talk about this particular topic in general, and we use this as a boilerplate starting architecture. It's what I found to be foundational, essential, and also doesn't include anything that you might not need, but it's more about organizing around things that you will need. For example, you're always going to need vertical slicing because we're always going to be implementing features, and features are always vertical slices of the model, and developers are always going to be doing work on use cases themselves. It's what we work on. So you are the actor working on use cases. So to answer your question, we're going to talk about the more foundational things. That's like a very specific query. We'll do more of the foundational essential first principles things. This is a first principles based course. What do you think about Nest.js? I haven't used it too much personally, but what I really truly think about it is if it gets people up and running faster, great. But I think the same thing as I think about it as I do with other libraries and frameworks, which is be aware of the libraries and frameworks, know how to use them, also know how they know what responsibility gaps they fill, and know what responsibility gaps they introduce if you write all of your code within them. Know how it affects your testing if you write all of your code inside a library for framework. It's okay to do that if you know what you're doing, but if you don't, if it's the only thing you know how to do, so to that I would say we need to learn how to maneuver in an effective way. And that is actually a part of the program. That is essential. Which one is that? That's essential number. That's part of strategic design and the walking skeleton. So that's actually in 2 essentials here, is knowing how to integrate with libraries and frameworks in a way where you don't have unscalable code. Here's actually a hot tip. Sorry, I love this question. And this is what I meant about I answer questions very deeply because I want to give you something actually useful. What you should take away from this, what you should go do is learn about control styles. That's going to be like the 80-20 of understanding how to effectively work with libraries and frameworks. You want to have your own control center. You want the part of your application that's tasked with coordination and control to be something you own, not something that the library or framework owns. That's all I'll say on that. What were some of the learnings you took from running the cohort? Personally, I love teaching. I actually had no idea how much fun this would be. And I also learned so much by teaching. So I'm definitely going to do another like mentorship cohort, but I want to just have this course be the thing where if you can't afford to get into the mentorship, this is something you can use and begin to see some value as fast as possible. Introducing as much value as fast as possible. If it's something is better than nothing, I always think that now. So even with Solid Book, I'm going to refine that into something entirely different. And then what that should have actually have been is going to be the new version of this book, which is going to be the Essentials, which is going to be pretty much just the book version of this course. So the 80/20, all of these principles, it's not going to have as much live demonstrations, but it's going to give you the challenges and things for you to go and do on your own. So that's what's happening with the book. I might turn Solid Book into a more like actually just be the introduction to software design and architecture, but the Essentials is going to be how to become a developer that can write scalable code. How do you efficiently implement Onion architecture with more than one developer when so much of the code base depends on the business logic? And changing business logic has so many cascading effects. Might seem to be a concurrency issue, or one person acquires the log for some code, no one else can touch it. Okay, so it seems like this question is more about managing work between you and another person, it seems like, less than actually implementing the Onion architecture in general. Cascading effects around the code base. I think I'm getting that question correctly here. Because if this was just about how do you begin to implement this on a code base where you're having cascading effects that aren't really well tested, I would say start with your characterization tests, start getting things stilted up. I almost think of it like if you wanted to tailor a pair of pants or a shirt, you would put your pins in it first, make sure that you could start it up and take it down, and before you go and do anything invasive. So I would start with that. And then from there, make sure that you guys just have a consistent way that you both know how to work. This is what I mean, right? This requires quite a level of mastery to write scalable code. It requires quite a level of mastery and maturity and applying constraints because, again, as I said, we're introducing the path of least resistance is to just chuck the code in, but it's not a scalable thing. So I would say you want to be at the same level of awareness for how features get developed, have a standard operating procedure for that. And I think some of these tools here, like faster or ways to think about problems, you want to make sure that the mental model you have for solving problems is exactly the same mental model that the other developer has for solving problems. Yeah. So recommendations for DI and Node. Personally, I don't use DI. Yeah, I don't actually use them. That's actually essential number 8, which is called composition. And instead of that, it doesn't take a whole lot of code to set that up, although I might explore some of them, but there's some really good patterns instead. I think it's important for all developers to be aware of the composite root pattern, have a place where everything gets wired up, and to actually do it yourself at least a few times manually so that you can get a sense of how coupling and cohesion what that actually really is and how that affects your code base. Because I think a lot of people don't really understand that. And I know for me, when I first heard about DI containers, I thought they were cool, but I'm like, damn, I feel like I'm making messes. I don't really understand what's going on. And the circular dependencies are crazy bad. So what went through your mind when you decided to ship Solid as a first version and go a slightly direction? Yeah, I can imagine it being a very daunting in the sense that you created a huge amount of pressure for yourself since there's a lot of content to cover. Yeah, this is a great question. I love this one. Thanks for asking. So what went through my mind when I first decided to ship this was I just need to like share what I know. This is absolutely ridiculous, this situation I'm in right now, which was, how did I just do 5 years of school and do all these co-ops, and I still don't know how to I still don't know how to write a code base that doesn't just turn into a spaghetti mess. I'm like, this is so ridiculous. I can't believe that. And at that time as well, I had just quit my job to work on a startup company. And then we had these government cuts from in Ontario. So we were supposed to get like a grant that fell through. I'm like, okay, great. I'm unemployed and I don't know shit. So I got a job. And as I was learning what I was learning on the job, I'm like, nah, like this is, I'm like, I was in that first situation where, oh, I thought the job would teach me stuff. I'm like, okay, you know what? This is ridiculous. I just need to create something here because there's a massive gap in this community, and this is just unacceptable, completely unacceptable. Professionalism and responsibility is really important to me. I learned that a lot from my mom. She just taught me a lot about responsibility, and I just felt like I had an obligation to create something to just get it out there as fast as possible and just get it going on the fly. And yeah, it was a lot of pressure, a lot of tactical stress, but I'm really glad like I threw myself in the fire and started doing that. There was a lot of content to cover, and that's the whole idea behind this. It's getting to the bottom of things. In the book Essentialism, he says that essentialists, and I truly do identify with this now that I know about it. He says that essentialists are people who can ascertain the critical few from the trivial many. And there's 3 steps to doing this. Step number 1 is observe and evaluate, which means you literally go out there, find everything, and evaluate everything. And I had already set that in my mind. I don't care. I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to buy every single book on software design and architecture I can find possible, and I'm going to figure this out because this is absolutely ridiculous. How much money did I spend in university studying and I'm still struggling? I'm like, I relied on the institutions to teach me. Last time I do that, because it just wasn't, yeah, story. So that's step number 1 is observe and evaluate. And then, damn, what was step number 2? Step number 2 is eliminate. So then I started to, as I got into reading really old books and even some of the new ones that would come out, I don't remember what book I was on. I think like I picked up Alistair Cockburn's use case book, and I'm flipping through it and I start noticing like, oh, this is cool. Like I'm seeing all these patterns and making all these connections between things like that are currently present, like GraphQL and whatnot. And I'm seeing all these patterns and I'm realizing, oh, like I'm now moving faster through these books because I already know this. I already know that. I already see that. I've seen this here with this, seen this here with that. And then I started eliminating stuff. And then at the end of that's when we end up with the 12 essentials. And then finally, the last step is to execute. So coming back to the question, yeah, it was a lot of pressure, but I already decided in my mind, like, I'm an insane person. I got to figure this out because no one else is doing it. And who else is going to dedicate 4 years of their life to figuring this out? I don't know very many people, but I'm like, seems like a worthy thing. I'm young at the time. I still am at heart. Could figure this out. So yeah. By the way, I'm only 27, turning 28 this year. When I hit that 30, it's going to feel weird. What is your next approach after you can code? I believe anyone can code nowadays, but how do you move on to the next level? Yeah, first principles, take the program. Take the Software Essentialism program. Honestly, if you want the other route, and we're going to do this in the course too, which is I want everyone in the program there's 5 projects because I want you to not just be able to apply this like the back end. I want you to be able to apply to back end, front end, a desktop app with a Chrome extension, and then create a custom integration. And I want you to be able to build features out and use the faster framework through all of those different contexts. Because if you can, again, from an essentialist point of view, if you can see what's common across each of those different problem domains and ways of approaching code, and you have the theory and practice that is foundational, like from movements like continuous delivery, like the Dave Farley stuff, like how to use the three ways, how to use like the lower level testing principles, like the builder patterns and domain driven design stuff. If you have the right essentials to know how to do that across all these different projects, you're good. I don't think there's much more for you to learn. I think the domain of writing code in general and how to play the game of software development. So even just aligning to, I would say, yeah, sorry, even just aligning to what is the game of software development. We're playing, being on the field playing soccer, like rather than being on the soccer field trying to play basketball, is going to get you a massive, it's going to have a massive difference in terms of like your progress here. So main ideas, software is a guess. You don't really know. Value something you don't know. What was it again? Negative value. Don't have negative value. Don't create negative value. And yeah, use the practices to know that you're just implementing guesses here. And orient yourself around that, and you're primed and ready to know there's guesses. And I'm not going to be able to do every feedback loop every single time, but more of them I can cover, the more confident I'll feel. All the way from the theoretical to the physical. In an org, how do you communicate with clients to give you the proper time to develop? How can we apply our principles in non-ideal conditions? There's this really great book called Extreme Programming Explained. I think it's Fowler and some, maybe even Kent Beck, some of the other like original XP folk. And there's this concept of the, sorry, what's it called now? It's the rights, it's the customer and developer rights or something like that. It's like things you need to know about what you're allowed to do and things you need to know about what you're like you should expect of yourself and what you should expect from others. Oh, I love this analogy, by the way. There's this book by Jean-Paul Sartre, the OG, one of the OG existential philosophers. It's called No Exit. And there's three characters in the book. And he has this thing where he says, hell is other people. And it's you don't really know what you are until you know what you're not. That's like the main idea. So if you saw like a bunch of firemen going down the street and you've never seen one before, you'd be like, oh, I'm not that. I don't know what that is, but I know I'm not that. So it's interesting. That's how you come to know what you are. So at the end of the day, in this game of software development, do you even know the role you play? Are you even aware of what you like, the interface that you implement? If that is ill-informed, it's going to be very hard to communicate the proper time to develop, because at the end of the day, communicating the proper time to develop is just a part of the role of the software developer. It's again coming back to if I went to get my tires changed, the developer dictates how long things take. And when the customer decides they want to change their mind, you say, brilliant, of course. Or the developer says, or the customer says, here's the new guess. Amazing. Amazing. Great. Then if you need to recompute how long it's going to take longer. It's amazing. We could do that. So given that this is a new guess, it's going to take this time. It's not like when you're at Chipotle and they're like, I don't know, do you want avocado with that? It's, yeah, give me avocado. It's like confidently communicate. Yeah, great. This is how long it's going to take. It's a new guess now, right? Or this is how long this is taking. And there's another technique called yesterday's weather, which is really great from that book too, which is you're going to know how long it takes for you to develop features when one, you have a consistent repeatable process, and two, you track how long it is taking you to develop features in the past. Without those two things, it's going to be very hard for you to know how long it's going to take to build things and to communicate that. How can you apply the principles in non-ideal conditions? I think be aware. Yeah, number one, be aware of the roles you're playing. Be aware of what you should be stern on, because it's literally the role you play, and then things that you can't be stern on, and things that you should actually expect the customer to do and welcome them to do. Because when both parties know what their roles are, like imagine you're in a Broadway play. If everybody knows the role that they play in the play, nobody's left saying, what's my line? And the whole play stops and jumps to a halt. everybody knows the role they're playing in the play, and then it could just brilliantly go on. The problem is when people start saying other people's lines, or you don't even know your own lines. That's where we run into issues. So we want clarity. Number one is we want clarity on how to play the game. So I'll leave it at that. And yeah, like that's principle number one is software essentialism. We go deep into all of that. How long will the program be? As short as possible. In fact, I say that because I don't value long programs. I think this as short as they can be, the better. Yeah, as short as it can be, the better. So the essential things we need to cover are the 12 principles and maneuvering through the feedback loops. And the way that it's broken up is we have intro, we have the metaphysics, which is understanding those two foundational ones. And I'm just going to share my screen again real quick. Let's do this. Yes. So we have the metaphysics, we have the theoretical, right? But so we're going to do the metaphysics first. We're going to get really clear on the foundation of reality. Then what we're going to do is we're going to get into the physical. So we're going to learn how to feedback loop, starting from the simplest possible feedback loops, the physical ones, all the way up to the most complex feedback loop, which is going to be deployment, and then into the execution space. So logging and stuff like that, being aware of what's actually going on with your app in production. And then we're going to jump over to theoretical. And this is where you're going to see more of the traditional domain-driven design stuff come out, like being able to make sense of the logical boundaries, and then being able to carve out a potential physical logical boundary. This is bounded contexts, the surface area of the problem space, and then creating a minimal architecture, like what are the libraries and frameworks we'll use? What are the external services we'll use? How do we organize all of that into a project? How does all of that fit together? How does that fit together in a way that has good boundaries? And how do you invent infrastructure that's required using abstraction design? Because sometimes you need to invent some infrastructural pieces and tie things together. It's like the last little bit of glue is the skill of abstraction design, just systems or things together, filling in little responsibility gaps. So that's the main structure. And then you'll practice with the React project, the backend API, the Chrome extension, desktop app, and the integration. And you could go as far as you want with these, but really all that's important is just to get at least 2 vertical slices built on each of those features so that you know how this works and how to do it. And you can apply the faster loop at each level through those. And then after that, this is a fun one. There's the opportunity to build anything you want. So far, we've at that stage in the program, what we will have done is have developed the skills to do the physical stuff and learned the skills to do the theoretical, but we've only really practiced the physical. We haven't really practiced the theoretical. So how do you practice the theoretical? You build a real problem. You build a real product. You solve a real problem for real people. So here, this is like an optional one because not everyone wants to do this. But for those of you who do want to do it, this is the part of a program where you can actually build your own product and start trying to help real people with something that actually is useful, or just solve your own problem. Find some problem in your life that you're like, this sucks, and build software. Begin this process of guessing and introducing this feedback loop from the theoretical space into the physical. So that part of the program is called bridging. And that's probably like my favorite part of the whole program. And I want us to be doing this in groups, or you could do it by yourself. But it would be really great if we did this as a part of the community where you get paired up with others who are now trained on the essentials and everyone's kind of thinking using the same mental models. And then we could just go and find problems to solve and start solving them. So that's at the end. And then the last thing, we just talk about some things like how to market yourself as a developer, how to now use these newfound skills, new opportunities you can find yourself in, how to go deeper in different areas. If you want to go deeper in functional programming, here's how to do that. If you want to go deeper in object-oriented, here's how to do that. Just like sub roadmaps. Now that you have this ability, as I said, mastery is not the goal. now that you have this ability and you're not in anxiety or boredom, where does inspiration take you? Here's some of the paths you could go down. And that's the way that it ends. All right, I think that's good there. I'll get rid of this. Can you give us an example of a particularly challenging project you worked on using first principles thinking? Just the essentials. Like, for example, I don't know if you were here for this, but this is the first one jumping into mind because it was literally just the other day, which was, yeah, how do I get people to connect from this platform, Kajabi, over to Discord? I'm like, what do I really need? How's this going to work? I'm like, and also, here's what I looked for. I looked for an API for Kajabi. I found they didn't have one. I'm like, damn, I guess I'm screwed. How am I going to get people over from Kajabi over into the Discord? What now? First principles. I'm like, okay, what do we need? Do we need an API? No, we don't. What are the responsibilities that we need to fill in? Need to be able to see that they've created an account, that they've this, that. Cool. They need to be able to submit in a form somewhere. Okay, where can I create a form? I'll show you guys where I created that form, and you're gonna be like, wow, that's hilarious. It is hilarious. Just pulling it up right now. You guys want to see where the form for where that is? If you haven't seen it already, here's where the form is. This is good. Oh, I love this. Whoops. Here's where the form is. It's literally in the platform. I figured out how to write JavaScript code inside of a course module, and I literally just built out an API to actually put your Discord and stuff in here, like inside of the course itself. And all of this I credit to first principles thinking, responsibility driven design, just not getting sucked into trying to use an API, not trying to think through problems in a technology driven way, trying to think them through in a just like a philosophical first principles sort of way. What do people need to do at all? And then what are those responsibility gaps that actually exist? Okay. Theoretically, like at state B, what would their experience be? Okay, they would be able to do this, and then they could do that, and they could do that in theory. Descend down towards actually making it happen. Oh, brilliant. Cool. Do we have the ability to, can I get JavaScript code running in this thing? So there's a part of the program where you actually will be building out a custom integration yourself, because sometimes there are libraries and frameworks out there that just don't play together nicely, and you don't want to get stuck there. If you have the ability to think at this level, you could just forget about the tools and just start looking at things as collections of responsibilities and see how they can connect together by filling in that responsibility gap. So as I said, it's like the glue. Is there going to be pricing depending on different countries? It's a good question. Not at the moment, but I guess got to see if I can figure out how to do that in Kajabi. That may very well also be another responsibility gap for me to figure out. Because I'm doing that with the with SolidBook. Not a question, just a comment. Yes. Eventual consistency. Transactional consistent. Yeah, transactional consistency is really, we struggled with that some time ago. That's definitely where sagas come up. That idea of item potency and how do you make it so that if someone was to do this again, to do a request again, the system's in a consistent state. That's one of my favorite problems in software design in general. That's where temporal decoupling comes into play, one of the key principles. And you could actually decouple temporally between features, and you could also decouple temporally, like when a feature gets called. So queuing and jobs. Yeah, I love that problem. It's fascinating. If you were to give another developer advice on writing their own book, what would it be? Oh man. I would say I would say this. Actually, here. I would say read this book. Read this book. Write useful books. Start with that. If I could do everything over from scratch, I probably would have started teaching earlier. Not a good idea to just start writing a book. Very bad idea, actually. I would say probably one of the hardest things in the universe is to just start writing a book without teaching it first, because you gained, again, the feedback loop is so tight. Like even the expressions on someone's face, like they're not getting it, they get it. That feedback loop is just so tight. So I'm gonna show you how I will descend your question right back down into first principles. If I were to give another developer advice on writing their own book, what would it be? Books. What's the purpose of a book? To Oh, okay, there's several purposes. What's the purpose of a nonfiction book? To create some sort of, to produce value. Okay, how can it do that? To create behavior change. Okay, how can I find out how to create behavior change? You need to figure out how to communicate ideas in a way that people understand it. How do I figure out how to communicate ideas in a way that people will understand it so they could have behavior change? You need to try stuff and get feedback. Look, we just found feedback loops. Okay, so feedback loops, get to those faster. That's how I will answer that. How much would I have to pay you to look at my own code base and give feedback? Yeah, don't know. For my mentorship, I was charging, like when I first started, I was giving discounts out around like $2,000 for like a couple months of mentorship. But I have to think about that. I'm trying to be a little smarter with my time right now, but also I really do appreciate seeing people's problems, and because I learned so much in doing that at the same time. So maybe just DM me later and we'll talk about it, figure that out. Okay, discount. How much money is it that the discount is against? So the course itself, right now, I'm just offering it for $4.99. But other comparable courses that, if you've seen like Dave Farley, you can't get anything from Dave Farley without shelling out, I think, geez, like $1,300 or something. It's a lot. I don't think that's very accessible to a whole lot of people, but yeah, for the course, that's the early adopter discount. So this is going to be like a massive ass discount for now. And I'm also like, everyone that's here, you guys get even more of a discount on that because you're here. As long as you make sure I have the link to that page, by the way. The what's it called? The negative value page. So I'll just link to that one more time, just so that everyone is here can get an additional discount on top of the already massively discounted course. Let me find the link key. Yeah. So I'll just post that in the chat again. Let's see what else. Sometimes the zeroth principle. Yes, and this is why it's great to be able to have mental models, because you don't want to always be able to go drive all the way down to the zeroth of first principles. However, I do have a problem with not being aware of what the zeroth of things that you do are and just following best practices, because that's what I think most people do. And it's a shortcut to never thinking critically. I know for me, like I used to just do stuff like a level of groupthink. You just start to do stuff because it's just what people do. It's like you really don't want to get sucked into that. Go question things for yourself. Be like, okay, I get it, and then let it go and just pick the framework of thinking up off the shelf later on. But you want to be able to go down to that level of first principles thinking so that you have awareness of why it is the way it is, or why we're doing these things the way that we're doing them. Was this the form that? Yeah, I think this was it. No, that was the screwed up one. Copy URL. Kajabi is the best platform in the universe. My nose didn't get bigger. I must not be Pinocchio. When does registration open for the course? So it's open today, but I just need to do a couple of things before I legitimately make it like public for everyone. Yeah, just drop your email into this form and I'm going to send you a link in a couple of hours where you could go and actually register it for it. But the main discount I'm offering is going to be open until I think like the 14th. But because you're all here today, you're going to get, what's that now? Like, geez, that's 75% off. But y'all are OGs for hanging in this long here too. So I really appreciate that. And y'all, I'm sure, are going to be great students because literally here, out of all the things you could be doing at this time on the planet, you've chosen to be here listening to me talk to you. So let me reciprocate that. Yeah, teaching live, +1 on the book, 1000%. Write useful books, Rob Fitzpatrick. Workshop Survival Guide, great book, excellent book. What's another one that was really good? Some books changed my life, and I would say changed my entire. And look how slim this is, right? It's such a small book, but this thing got. I would say this book here got. What's it called? It just got solid book back on track. Got everything back on track. Besides anything else, the best lesson I learned after agreeing to start working with Khalil is to invest in myself more. Incredible. I love to hear that. Yeah, Tony's been an amazing student. Like feedback looping his way through stuff. Like so. By the way, y'all should thank Tony because a lot of what I've gone on to put in this program, like Tony was like testing grounds for that. So make sure you're nice to him. Can we pay in installments? I haven't set that up. See, these are the things that I need to actually make sure are configured, which is why I haven't sent the link yet. So it's good. Sounds like a Udemy strategy discount. What's their strategy discount? As far as I know, Udemy's strategy is give you courses that are 200 hours that you never have the ability to finish them. They look like they're incredible. But you just get burnt out going through them. Man, I'm keeping everybody up. So glad to be here. Timing was great. Yeah, that's sick. I was out of home. How much is the course after a discount? Put your email into that link and you'll literally get 75% off, which I wasn't even fully intending to do today, but I had all kinds of issues with everything possible for this launch. So consider that my way of saying thanks for dealing with this weirdness. Have you read 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Burkeman? No, I've not read it. I don't know what that is. Let me look that up. Let's take a quick peek at that. Time management. Yeah, let me get that. Sounds ideal. Sounds ideal. Yeah, I'm a mortal. Last time I checked. It says time management for mortals. I like that. Yeah, I'm literally. Yeah, you're absolutely correct about 65 plus 15, 75. But it's going to shoot right up like as soon as the discount's over. So that's going to de-incentivize a lot of people from joining, which is fine by me because I want everyone who really wants to be here. I don't just want people buying courses. Last question. Do you have any advice on learning from books? Yeah, man. I love that question. By the way, can you tell I like books? Let's see. Let me pull out one of my favorite ones over here. Oh, I don't have any of my favorite ones right around this corner. The advice I would have is look at the inside of this. I don't know if you can see that. Here, let me just make my screen a little larger so I could see. Yeah, here we are. Like, this thing is marked AF up. So I do this thing where I'll create codes for yourself. I'll create a code for me where I'll put a little star and I'll say, anytime I have a star, to me it means legitimately this is like actual behavior change that I need to go and do. I will highlight things to make them easier to reread and reread books. Just the best books are the ones that you're going to read over 3, 4, 5 times. I've read this, I don't know how many times now, but evidently it has changed so much of my behavior. And if you find that you're not like a nonfiction book is not going to change your behavior, just put it away because it's just a waste of time. I also put a lot of these. I'm gonna say the meta advice here is be aware of how you think, be aware of how you learn, be aware of how you understand. So discoverability and understanding, that's Don Norman's The Design of Everyday Things. You are trying to turn this book into something that you have designed for yourself to be a tool for behavioral change. So whatever you need to do in order to find the relevant parts of the book that are useful to you and to create behavior change for yourself, whatever it is you need to do in order to do that should be the goal of you reading the book. Shouldn't be to get to the end of the book. Forget that. The purpose of you reading the book is to have a problem. I want a better approach to that problem. I'm going to get a better approach to that problem by changing my behavior. As I read the book, I am moving closer to the solution to that problem. So that's that. All right, I think everyone's all questioned out here, unless there's any more questions. I'll give it until let's say 7:25 on my time here, so maybe five more minutes of questions. Unless if no one asks any more questions within that time, I'll jump out of here and then get around to arranging everything for everyone so we could get into the program and get some discounts. But this was awesome. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for being a part of this community. This was fun too. I will definitely do more of these. It's just, yeah, it's great. How long will it take to do the course? If the course is self-guided, you could do it. You could take as long as you want, but don't take as long as you want because time is of the essence. But yeah, ideally, I think if you committed yourself to making it a priority to finish the course, based on everything I have planned out, this is like a pre-launch and early adopters type situation. So I don't have everything quite fully made out yet, but I do have like all the videos, but I do have a straight line process that you could start on today as I continue to build out all the stuff. But this should take you like 4 weeks to learn all this stuff. Forget who said it. Creativity is subtraction. I do not want to see anybody reading. I don't want to see anyone 50, 100 pages into the blue book trying to figure it out anymore. It's just not an experience of life that I think is very good, personally. I've been there. Somebody asked about if I'm going to be doing any more mentorship program coaching this year. It's a great question. Yeah, definitely. I'm going to do it at some point. I think after I get the course completely built out and the book done, I may even be doing the book and coaching at the same time. But I think number one is let's get this course done, and then let's get Solid Book and the new book, which is going to be the Essentials, and everyone who bought Solid Book gets access to both of those. Let's get those things done first, and then we'll shift over to doing more live stuff. But I need to be a little more scalable with my time at the moment, and I think even doing these live streams seems to be really scalable. So I've enjoyed this a lot. Boom. So let's see. I'm just going to make sure everybody has access to the other AMA channel. So chat, I'm going to give everyone who is a crafter has access to this channel now. The AMA channel. View, you should be able to send messages in there now. Yep. So can somebody just confirm that they have access to the AMA March 1st channel? If someone could confirm that for me, that would be fantabulous. and can post words in there. Woo! Thank you. Good, great. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bounce out off of here soon in, let's say, 2 minutes. And then if you have any more questions, you want to talk more about the course, about anything else, I'll probably hang around for a little bit longer and then get this stuff up, get some emails sent out, start getting people into the program. And then I'll return to this, answer some more questions. It's been incredible. Nice to see everybody here. Really cool. Let's not be strangers. All right. So I'll see y'all. I'll see y'all in the AMA March 1st chat. And I'm just going to cut the vid right now.